journey that we take looking at the Mughal Empire. So these dates right here are the dates we are looking at the Mughals. The Mughals are going to last until 1858, maybe nine. But that's really into modern history, so we are not going to be getting that deep into it. We'll reference it, but. So here we see the Mughal Empire at its greatest extent. If you are writing, you can just go and stop at the Indian subcontinent part. You don't have to have the specific places. You could add that the British later defeated them. But we see that the Mughal Empire is going to rule the majority of India, which is a pretty amazing feat. Because one of the things, when we look at a map of the world, places like India are much bigger than they appear. We know when we have our sphere of a world and we try to flatten it out on the size of like a rectangle on a sheet of paper, what it does is it stretches the north and south poles to make things in the upper northern and lower southern hemispheres look really big, and things in the equator look a lot smaller. India is huge. I mean, they call it a subcontinent. It's got its own tectonic plates under it. So this is a huge, massive land, and we're going to see the Mughals are going to control most of it. There'll be a period where a group called the Marathas are going to go over in this region and have some big chunks, but they're going to get conquered and diminish quite a bit. We unfortunately don't have a chance to talk about the Marathas. But anyways, we see Mughal Empire, lots and lots of territory. I like that blue iris. That's pretty. Anyways, 1858. Yes, I was right. So Mughal literally means from the land of the Mongols or of the Mongols. And so what happened is we had our Mongol Empire. We had it divided up into 4 khanates, and the Ilkhanate, which ruled in what they called Persia back then, but we would call present-day Iran. That was an area that was ruled by a man named Timur. Timur is going to be a great conqueror, and eventually they are going to be one of the few people to ever conquer India. And when the Mughals come in, we get this really cool marriage of civilizations and cultures. We're going to see the Indian and Persian cultures mixing to create some really, really beautiful and incredible architecture. I mean, we all know about the Taj Mahal. And I mean, look at that amazingness, the glory, the beauty of it. And that wouldn't have been possible. Wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the Mughals. So obviously descendants of Genghis Khan. Now, one thing that's going to be unique and that makes them really a separate people is we know when we studied the Mongols, they assimilated whatever culture was going on. They, that when they captured Persia, they became Muslims. They adopted a lot of Persian culture. When we see the Mughals going, now some Indian culture will get mixed in, but they're going to stay pretty separate in a lot of ways. Particularly with their religion. We're going to see later on this is going to create some real clashes, whereas the Mughals will keep Islam as their dominant religion, and the people of India will have Hinduism be their primary religion. And unfortunately, there will be some real issues between that. But we'll also see some cool things, just depending on the ruler. Now, this empire was started by a man named Babur. So with our first success criteria, who is Babur? We know he was the founder of the Mughal Empire. Now, Babur is really cool because he is going to wind up being one of those military genius types. So, this is the time when I usually go and get out my whiteboard, and so this will be the closest thing that I have to a whiteboard. So he is going to be a big proponent of technology. So he's going to have guns, cannons, and traditional weapons. So we have, what happens is, the Sultan of Delhi is going to be the ruler of India. And he's going to be at a city in Panipat. And, well, it's more like a town back then. And Babur wants to conquer India. But the Sultan of Delhi has 100,000 soldiers. He has war elephants. Babur, I think, had around 15,000. So at night, he's going to go and have all sorts of things blocking over near the entrance. So if this is the big gate right there, He's going to have all sorts of carts that are overturned, boxes, and just junk going, leading out like here. Behind it, he's going to put cannons. All right. On the other side, he's going to dig a big ditch. And on this side, he has people with guns. It'd be much easier to do with like a pen and a whiteboard. Iris is laughing at my horrible artistry. They also are going to have people with bows and arrows. That's a person, I swear. I don't know why his aunt. Yeah. So, never mind. That was a failure. His like bow and arrow was like coming from his body because I put his arm. Oh well. Anyways, Babur has a problem. Huge army, but he knows the Sultan of Delhi is like really full of himself. So he goes and has this trap out here. But the Sultan of Delhi doesn't even notice. And he puts a couple of his regular soldiers, so he says, Rajir, all right, you're going to go be brave, all right? You're going to be right in the front. There's my battle Raj. A perfect representation of Rajir. Wonderful. And he and, a bunch of other people are there right in the front. The Sultan of Delhi sees this small, puny army right in the front and sends his whole army out there. Raj is like, wow, it does look just like me. And so the whole army comes streaming out. But remember, just like the Battle of Thermopylae, they can't use their numbers because they're all back to back, front to front. They can't actually fight. They're in this narrow area. And then we have cannons going off on this side. Boom! We've got arrows and guns going off in there. It is really ruining the day of the Sultan of Delhi's men. But that's not what's going to win the day. You see, he had war elephants. Now, we have the stereotypical an elephant never forgets, right? What is the other thing that people always like say in elephants, like especially like in the cartoons that we see with elephants? What is the other stereotypical thing about elephants besides that they don't forget anything? Are you representing that they're big, Hayden, or what do you want to say? Okay, so they are big, and they are. But what about those big elephants do they say? What happens when like a little teeny mouse comes into their circus tent? Iris just acted it out. Eli?
They get scared.
They get scared. That's cool, Raj. Yeah, they get scared. And so these people, the Sultan of Delhi's men, probably have never seen or heard a gun or cannon before, most likely, the vast majority of them, because guns are still new. The Mongols are getting them out to people. The elephants certainly have never either. The elephants are in the back of the line. So, we've got our, why it has round feet, I don't know. That's actually not a bad elephant, to be honest. The elephants are in the back. They get scared, and they run forward, and they smush all of the Sultan of Delhi's guys. So they wind up stampeding and squishing and squashing the wrong army because they were all the way in the back. And we've got, Babur's men, his men are up here. They're protected, all this. So the Sultan of Delhi's men get squished and squashed by their own elephants, and Babur wins the day. So we see, even though Babur only had like 15,000 men compared to the 100,000 of the Sultan of Delhi, he's able to be a military genius and be victorious. And why does he want to go to India, though? Because India was rich, like super rich. Think about it. They are one of the oldest contiguous civilizations in the world at this time. They had been conquered by the Aryans like at 1700 BC. And since then, they've been on their own, going and being awesome, doing lots of trade, having lots of things. So they were incredibly rich, incredibly powerful, and they had one thing that no one else in the world had at this time. They had diamonds. That's right. At this time period in history, India was the only place that had diamond mines. So Babur wanted the gems, wanted the gold, the silver, wanted the diamonds, and he got them. And as we know, the Mughals, they built the Taj Mahal, but we're going to get way more into the Taj Mahal being built later on in the unit, because of course we're going to talk about this amazing structure. But it was a tomb for Shah Jahan's wife. There's a bunch of theories that it might actually have been a Hindu temple first and then converted. I talked to a student's mom about it, who she's from India, and it was a very interesting discussion on her thoughts of that kind of theory now. But it's pretty cool. There's like secret doors that can't be opened there and everything. It's so fascinating. If you want to go learn a lot of really neat things, start studying the Taj Mahal. It's so cool. Anyways, check these out. Speaking of cool, these are Mughal war elephants. Now, the Sultan of Delhi had war elephants, but they did not have armor and awesomeness. The Mughals went afterwards, start adding this. So think about it. Like the elephant was like the ancient world's version of a tank, and now they made it even more, like they're already hard to kill. Like there's something called an elephant gun that shoots a really, really big, strong bullet because elephant's skin is so thick and strong anyways. And now they put steel plating on them. Oh, but there is more. Okay. So another thing that they would do, which is really kind of crazy, is they would saw about half the tusks off. All right. And you might be thinking, Mr. Kenny, why would they do that? Well, because they would replace it with swords. Yeah. They would go saw that off and then put swords over top of it so that it's like the same length. So they're accustomed to like when they're going and like would be using their tusks. Now they're deadly sharp swords. Isn't that crazy? They would train the elephants so that when they're going marching and they're like going through like the jungle, that the elephants would like clear the trees that way with like ancient bulldozers. And another thing too. So Joel is battling these elephants and battling the Mughals. Well, the elephants were trained to like put one of its big giant feet on top of one of Joel's feet, which of course is going to be really painful, getting your foot stepped on by an elephant. But it gets worse. Then it would wrap its my trunk. Yeah, sorry, my brain like stopped working for a second. Wrap the trunk around the opposite leg, and then yeah, crazy. I know. I'm sorry, I just scarred you, Iris. I did not know that. Very interesting. So, yeah, war elephants, terrifying. I mean, because on the top too, like you got like Mikhail, like with a bow and arrow, like ruining people's days. You got like Zion with a spear, making people look like Swiss cheese. I mean, this was a battle platform. It was very, very scary. This is just a quick timeline. You don't have to actually write anything up on here. We're going to be focusing on Babur, Akbar. We'll do a wee bit with Jahangir and Shah Jahan, and a wee bit with Aurangzeb. Akbar is going to be the guy, and Shah Jahan are going to be the two we're going to spend the most time with. I mean, when you got someone titled The Great, you know we probably got to look at him a little bit. Why you? I don't know. You're the first guy that pops in my head, and I usually have the terrible, horrific things happen to boys because girl warriors weren't that common back then. Sorry. So our notes are going to end here. This is just a quick other thing with Babur. You know, this first part is very redundant, and I'm never going to ask you like what his capital was because like that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. The one thing about Babur is he was a fantastic conqueror. We don't know what kind of ruler he would have been because he only ruled the empire for 4 years because he wound up dying kind of young, which is kind of like one of those things we keep on seeing. Like Alexander the Great creates an empire, dies before he can rule it. Genghis Khan creates an empire, dies before he really rules it. Babur did the same thing. So we don't know what kind of ruler. He didn't make any laws that we really know of. But thankfully, his grandson is going to wind up becoming a really, really good ruler and cement the power of the Mughals. Another thing to mention, and I'm going to stop recording now, is people realize that the Mughal and Ottoman section is the time of the best hats.